Well, it was 30 years ago that MTV was born as a 24-hour music video channel. A paradigm shift in culture with iconic videos like Michael Jackson's Billie Jean beaming into the lounges. Today, MTV Networks International has become the world's largest entertainment group with almost 200 channels, including Nickelodeon and hit shows like Jersey Shore. Well, the driver behind this phenomenon is Bill Roedy, former chairman and CEO of MTV International, and he's out here speaking at the Australian Broadcasting Summit, and he joins me now. Bill, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, big confession, I'm from the money for nothing, I want my MTV in mid-1980s era. But since then, how did you get into so many different markets worldwide?
Oh, gosh, perseverance. You know, I like to say we're in 300 countries. There's only 195, of course, and we have 6 billion viewers, but we really have 2 billion. Who's counting?
But enormously different cultures, because MTV is quite a shock, presumably, for many of these cultures.
Well, that was the key to success, I believe, which we were cool. We were local before local was cool. You know, now everyone does it, and they do a good job at it. But 20 years ago, no one did that. And the key was to respect and reflect local cultures. Not one burger, not one cola, a product that really changes depending on where you're going. So, you know, to avoid the tag of cultural imperialism was pretty important.
So
still
MTV in Malaysia, for example, I mean, with Islam, you know, how do you do that?
Well, on the Muslim channels, Malaysia is a good example. Indonesia, Pakistan, we have called a prayer. We interpret Ramadan in a very youthful way. We put Dora the Explorer on Nickelodeon in a burqa in the Middle East.
Dora in a burqa?
Dora in a burqa, why not? It works.
Cool, OK. You also talk about breaking the rules. I mean, how controversial do you get? I mean, for example, Jersey Shore, your huge hit. You've got Snooki into our lounges. You talk about Guidos and Guidettes. I mean, does that go down in Italy? Presumably not.
Well, you know, we still do the global programming. And probably of the 23 some odd years I was with MTV, what I'm really most proud about is bringing Jersey Shore and Beavis and Butthead to faraway lands.
Thanks for that. OK. And also, I guess...
And don't forget Jackass, by the way. Jackass, a signature program. But we didn't just bring Jackass. We brought Jackass 3D, always on the edge of technology.
You talked today about... disruptive technology, and I think you'll talk later in the week. You say that the customer is king. Mm-hmm. How does MTV adapt and change to the customer?
Well, adaptation, I think, is really key, and MTV's success has been built on reinventing itself all the time. And in this world, I talk to kids a lot all over the world about how you have to adapt, because we are in a world now that's, oh gosh, it's not just change, it's hyper change. Mm-hmm. And I say that when I was growing up, the things that defined my life didn't even exist. When I was graduating from college, there was no such thing as HBO, MTV, the AIDS epidemic, BRIC countries. And now, you know, things that define people's lives haven't even started yet. And it changes so quickly. I had my 7-year-old daughter come up to me, Tiger, and say, "Daddy, did you know that her 15-year-old sister, did you know that Noah was born before the internet?" So in her eyes, a 15-year-old is already out of it. So the key is adapting. I was 50 years old, I learned how to rap. So you can still learn even when you're 50.
We've had quite a scary development here in Australia for digital broadcasting rights. We had a federal court decision the other day that could mean that all broadcasting content is actually up for grabs and could be recorded and then streamed via cloud technology. We had sporting rights, which had been bought by one phone company, being delivered on a mobile 2 minutes later, and that was OK according to the courts. Now, that could have a serious knock-on effect if it went around the world. What do you make of that sort of development?
Well, I don't know all the details, but it sounds like a mistake. It sounds like it was a wrong decision, and it really should be corrected. You know, when things are moving this fast, it really takes... The regulation part and the judicial part needs to be very, very thoughtful, because you can make mistakes, and copyright needs to be preserved, and the payment for rights needs to be equitable. So that sounds like an obvious mistake.
Corporate social responsibility is the other big part of MTV and indeed your life. You argue that it's very much part of growing the brand of a company as well.
I do. I believe doing good is good for business. And I tell businesses all around the world, do it for your customers. If you're Coca-Cola, for example, in Africa, you need to fight the AIDS epidemic to protect your customers. Further, you need to do it for your employees so they feel good about coming into work. And if you don't believe those two, do it for your brand, because it really is good for your brand. Now, at MTV, we took a risk. We put the 3 letters MTV, the brand, the very powerful brand, right next to HIV. We put condom instruction in prime time. We got fined for it. All that was a risk, but I believe it was important because we had the distribution and we had the vertical connection in areas that were hard hit by the AIDS epidemic. Pick an issue, doesn't matter. There's so many issues out there. As a company, and there's so many challenges, and the world is filled with all sorts of problems. Business needs to do their part, and the good news is business increasingly is doing their part.
All right, last question. Best song of all time?
Money for Nothing. I just heard it in the taxi over here.
Okay.
You know, MTV's
Bill
been
Roedy.
mentioned in 26 different songs, but Money for Nothing was probably the best.
Good on you, Bill Roedy. Nice to have you here.